What happens when prejudice blinds someone to the truth, leading them to make a mistake they can never take back? This is the story of Olivia Carter, a poised and powerful woman who quietly boarded a private jet, unaware of the storm brewing ahead. What should have been a smooth journey turned into a spectacle of discrimination and judgment. The tension on the flight reached a breaking point when the lead flight attendant, Rachel Thompson, crossed the line, publicly humiliating Olivia in front of all the passengers. The moment that left everyone stunned. A sharp slap across Olivia's face. A sound that echoed through the cabin like thunder. But what Rachel didn't realize was that Olivia wasn't just another passenger. She wasn't someone you could dismiss or underestimate. Olivia Carter was the owner of the very plane they were flying on. A self-made billionaire whose empire extended across continents. This story isn't just about an incident, it's about the profound lessons it holds. It's about the power of respect, the dangers of prejudice, and the strength of composure in the face of injustice. Stay with us until the end to discover how Olivia turned this shocking moment into a powerful message that left everyone speechless. If you've ever faced or witnessed discrimination, share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge perspectives and inspire change. Together, let's build a world where respect knows no boundaries. Click that like button and tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The private jet gleamed under the afternoon sun, its sleek design a testament to luxury and exclusivity. The cabin interior was nothing short of opulence, plush leather seats arranged with precision, subtle gold accents lining the walls, and ambient lighting that exuded sophistication. Every detail, from the hand-stitched carpets to the crystal glassware, was designed to make its passengers feel like royalty. A soft hum of ambient music played in the background, complementing the tranquil yet elite atmosphere. Among the well-dressed passengers was Olivia Carter, a woman in her late 30s whose presence commanded quiet attention. She was dressed in a tailored charcoal blazer paired with matching slacks, her understated elegance reflecting a sense of sophistication and power. Olivia moved with the poise of someone who didn't need to seek validation. Her calm confidence spoke volumes. Despite her immense wealth and status, Olivia preferred to keep a low profile, valuing her privacy above all else. She was here to oversee an important part of her growing business empire. But none of the passengers or crew were aware of her true identity. At the entrance to the cabin stood Rachel Thompson, the lead flight attendant. Her uniform was immaculate, every crease pressed to perfection, and her sharp features radiated a sense of authority. Rachel prided herself on maintaining order, but her judgmental nature often influenced how she treated passengers. To her, appearances dictated respect, and she made no effort to hide her biases. When Olivia stepped onto the plane, Rachel's demeanor shifted. Her usual welcoming tone turned curt, and the warmth she showed other passengers disappeared entirely. She barely acknowledged Olivia, offering only a dismissive nod before moving on to greet others with a bright smile. Rachel's hostility was subtle but palpable. She fawned over the other passengers, particularly those she deemed important, like the well-dressed couple seated nearby. But when it came to Olivia, her glances lingered with unspoken judgment, as though she didn't believe Olivia belonged in such a luxurious setting. Olivia, however, remained unbothered. She took her seat quietly, her calm demeanor unaffected by Rachel's attitude. Little did Rachel know, the woman she dismissed so easily would soon upend everything she thought she knew about power. privilege, and respect. As the passengers settled into their seats, the luxurious cabin buzzed with quiet conversations, the clinking of champagne glasses, and the faint hum of the jet engines preparing for takeoff. Rachel Thompson, the lead flight attendant, moved briskly through the aisle, her professional demeanor intact at least for those she deemed worthy of her attention. Rachel's warmth was evident when she stopped at the seats of Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, a well-dressed older couple traveling together. She greeted them with a bright smile, offering them personalized service and making sure their needs were met. "Is there anything I can bring you before we take off?" she asked in a cheerful tone, adjusting Mrs. Bennett's blanket and refilling her glass of champagne. But when Rachel passed Olivia Carter, her demeanor changed entirely. She cast a fleeting glance at Olivia's neatly stowed handbag, her lips pressing into a thin line. She didn't ask if Olivia needed anything. She didn't smile. Instead, she continued down the aisle without acknowledgement, as though Olivia wasn't even there. Olivia noticed the stark contrast, but she remained composed, her calm presence undisturbed. She sat quietly, scrolling through her phone, while Rachel's dismissive attitude became increasingly apparent. The tension escalated when Olivia politely flagged Rachel down as she passed by. "Excuse me," Olivia said softly, her tone steady and polite. "Could I have some water? Please?" Rachel stopped, turning toward Olivia with a condescending expression. "I'll get to you when I have time," she replied curtly, before moving on to refill drinks for other passengers. A few rows back, Grace Miller, the junior flight attendant, observed the interaction with unease. Grace had noticed Rachel's attitude toward Olivia from the start, and it didn't sit right with her. However, Grace hesitated to intervene, aware of Rachel's sharp temper and domineering nature. The breaking point came shortly after the plane began to taxi. Rachel approached Olivia with purposeful strides, her posture rigid, and her tone dripping with condescension. "Ma'am," she said loudly enough for other passengers to hear, "I believe you're sitting in the wrong section. This area is reserved for premium passengers." Heads turned as whispers rippled through the cabin. A few passengers exchanged knowing glances, their assumptions about Olivia's appearance feeding into the narrative Rachel had set. Olivia looked up, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she replied simply. Rachel crossed her arms, her irritation bubbling to the surface. "I'm going to have to ask you to move to the back of the plane," she said, her tone firm. Olivia didn't flinch. "Before you make that request, you might want to double-check the passenger list," she said evenly. Rachel's lips curled into a tight smile. "I don't need to check anything. I know who belongs here and who doesn't." The cabin grew uncomfortably silent as the tension mounted. Some passengers averted their gazes, pretending not to notice, while others leaned in, eager to watch the confrontation unfold. Grace, standing near the galley, felt a pang of guilt. She glanced at the passenger list clipped by the cockpit door, contemplating whether she should step in. Summoning her courage, she approached Rachel cautiously. "Maybe we should double-check the list," Grace said quietly. Rachel spun around, her glare freezing Grace in her tracks. "I've got this under control," she snapped. "Go back to your duties." Grace hesitated, her face flushing with embarrassment. Reluctantly, she stepped back, biting her lip as she watched the scene unfold. Olivia, meanwhile, remained seated, her calm demeanor unshaken. She tilted her head slightly, her voice carrying an undeniable strength despite its softness. "You're making a mistake," she said, her words deliberate. Rachel scoffed, her frustration boiling over. "You're the one causing a scene," she snapped. From across the aisle, a businessman who had been quietly observing finally spoke up. "From where I'm sitting," he said firmly, "you're the one making a scene." Rachel's face flushed with anger. But Olivia didn't react. Instead, she leaned back in her seat, her calmness a stark contrast to Rachel's escalating hostility. "Sometimes," Olivia said softly, "it's best to take a step back and reconsider your assumptions." The weight of Olivia's words lingered in the air. But Rachel dismissed them, too blinded by her own prejudice to realize the magnitude of her mistake. The cabin remained tense, the murmurs of the passengers growing louder as Rachel prepared to take matters further, completely unaware of the storm she was about to unleash. Grace watched in silence, her heart pounding. She wanted to do more, but Rachel's authority held her back. Little did Rachel know, Olivia wasn't just another passenger, she was the one person Rachel couldn't afford to underestimate. The cabin was tense, the air thick with unspoken words and exchanged glances. Olivia Carter sat in her seat, composed and unmoving, while Rachel Thompson stood towering over her, her frustration nearing its peak. "Ma'am, I won't ask you again," Rachel said, her voice cutting through the cabin. "You need to move to the back of the plane, or I will have security escort you off." Olivia looked up, her calm demeanor unwavering. "I've already told you," she said evenly, her voice carrying an air of quiet authority. "I'm not moving. I suggest you reconsider your actions before this escalates further." Rachel's patience snapped, her cheeks flushed with anger as murmurs rippled through the cabin. Passengers whispered among themselves, some with nervous glances, others with quiet smirks, seemingly entertained by the unfolding drama. "Why doesn't she just move?" a woman muttered under her breath. "She's probably looking for attention," someone else replied with a shrug. Rachel took a step closer to Olivia, her voice rising. "You don't belong here," she exclaimed, her tone harsh and filled with indignation. Then it happened. Without warning, Rachel raised her hand and slapped Olivia across the face. The sound of the slap echoed through the cabin like a thunderclap, shocking everyone into silence. Gasps rippled through the rows of seats, and all eyes turned toward the scene. A woman in the front clasped her hand over her mouth in disbelief. A man near the back rose halfway from his seat, his face a mixture of shock and anger. Even Rachel froze for a moment, as though realizing what she'd done. Grace, standing a few steps away, gasped audibly, her hands flying to her mouth. Her eyes filled with horror as she looked between Rachel and Olivia. Olivia, however, didn't flinch. She slowly straightened her posture, her hand resting on the armrest, her gaze fixed firmly on Rachel. Her calmness in the face of such disrespect was both unsettling and powerful. "You've crossed the line," Olivia said quietly, her tone steady and deliberate. "And now you'll have to deal with the consequences of your actions." Rachel's face twisted with defiance. Consequences, she scoffed, though her voice faltered slightly. You're the one making trouble here. Olivia didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached for her phone. Her movements slow and deliberate. She typed a quick message, then placed the phone back on the armrest beside her. Its screen glowing faintly. The small gesture carried an unspoken weight. One that didn't go unnoticed. Rachel narrowed her eyes. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded. Olivia leaned back slightly, her expression serene. Taking care of the situation, she replied simply. In the corner of the cabin. Grace hesitated, then took a small but significant step forward. "Rachel," she said, her voice trembling, "I really think we should check the passenger list. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." Rachel turned on Grace with a glare. "Stay out of this," she snapped. "I know exactly what's going on here." But Rachel wasn't as confident as she sounded. Doubt crept into her mind as she replayed Olivia's calm demeanor and her cryptic warning. Rachel's gaze flicked to the phone on the armrest, unease bubbling beneath her anger. From across the aisle, the businessman who had spoken earlier tapped his fingers on the armrest, his gaze steady on Olivia. He leaned slightly toward the passenger beside him and murmured, "She's someone important. I can feel it." Grace, meanwhile, hovered near the galley. Torn between fear of Rachel's wrath and the growing realization that Olivia wasn't just another passenger. She glanced at the cockpit door, where the passenger list hung clipped to a board, and debated whether to take action. Rachel, however, was too far gone. Her pride wouldn't let her back down now. She folded her arms and looked down at Olivia with a sneer. "Let me tell you something," she said. "You're not as important as you think you are." Olivia's gaze didn't waver. She sat poised, radiating an unshakable sense of confidence. "We'll see about that," she replied softly. The whispers in the cabin grew louder, passengers craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the unfolding confrontation. Moments later, the soft chime of an incoming message sounded from Olivia's phone. She glanced at the screen briefly, then returned her focus to Rachel. "You're about to find out who I am," she said, her words calm yet filled with gravity. Rachel's confidence began to falter. She could feel the weight of Olivia's composure pressing down on her, making her question everything she thought she knew. In the corner of her mind, a small voice whispered, "What if I've made a mistake?" The tension in the cabin was palpable. The passengers, once passive observers, now seemed acutely aware that something significant was about to happen. Grace took another tentative step forward, her eyes darting between Olivia and Rachel, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time, Rachel's facade of control cracked. Her posture stiffened, and she swallowed hard, unsure of what Olivia had just set in motion. The tense silence in the cabin was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. The cockpit door opened, and the captain stepped out, his expression grim and purposeful. The cabin seemed to hold its collective breath as he moved past the passengers, his eyes scanning the scene until they landed on Rachel. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice calm but authoritative, "we will be making an unscheduled landing shortly. Please remain seated and prepare for descent." Confusion rippled through the cabin, murmurs breaking out among the passengers. Why are we landing? One person whispered. What's going on? Another asked. Rachel turned toward the captain, her face betraying a mix of frustration and unease. Captain. I've got everything under control, she said quickly. There's no need for. The captain held up a hand to silence her. Enough. Rachel, he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. We need to address this situation immediately. The murmurs grew louder as passengers exchanged curious and nervous glances. Olivia remained seated, her calm demeanor unchanged, though there was a subtle glint of anticipation in her eyes. The captain turned toward Olivia, his voice shifting to one of respect. Miss Carter, he said, his words sending a shockwave through the cabin. My apologies for the disturbance. We'll handle this situation as per your instructions. Gasps erupted from the passengers. Miss Carter, someone whispered. Wait. Olivia Carter? The businessman across the aisle leaned back in his seat, a knowing smile spreading across his face. I knew it, he murmured. Rachel's face drained of color as the realization hit her. Her eyes darted between the captain and Olivia, her confidence crumbling. Miss Carter, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Olivia rose slowly from her seat, her movements deliberate and poised. Adjusting her blazer, she turned to face Rachel, her gaze steady and unwavering. Yes, she said simply, her voice calm yet carrying undeniable authority. Olivia Carter, owner of this plane. The cabin fell into stunned silence. Passengers who had previously ignored or judged Olivia now stared at her with wide eyes, their expressions shifting to a mixture of awe and embarrassment. Rachel stumbled over her words, her voice trembling. I didn't know. I didn't mean. Olivia raised a hand, silencing her. You didn't know because you didn't bother to find out, she said firmly. You made assumptions based on my appearance, and you let your prejudice guide your actions. Instead of treating me with respect, you chose to humiliate me in front of everyone. Rachel's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The weight of Olivia's words seemed to press down on her, rendering her speechless. The captain stepped forward, his expression resolute. Rachel, your behavior today has been completely unacceptable. Effective immediately. You are relieved of your duties. Rachel's face crumpled, her hands trembling. Please. Captain, she pleaded. It was a misunderstanding. I didn't mean to. You slapped a passenger, the captain said sharply. That's not a misunderstanding, it's assault. At that moment, two uniformed officers stepped into the cabin, having been notified during the plane's descent. One of them approached Rachel. Ma'am, he said, his voice professional but firm. You're under arrest for assault. Rachel gasped, her eyes wide with panic. Wait. No. This is a mistake, she cried. But the officer was already reading her rights as he placed handcuffs on her wrists. The passengers watched in stunned silence as Rachel was escorted down the aisle, her once commanding presence reduced to a defeated figure. Her arrogance had evaporated, replaced by regret and humiliation. Once Rachel was removed from the cabin, Olivia turned to address the passengers. Her voice was steady, yet there was a softness to it that commanded attention. To everyone here, she began. I apologize for what you had to witness today. This is not the standard of service I expect on my planes. Nor is it the kind of behavior I tolerate. The businessman nodded approvingly, while other passengers murmured their agreement. A woman near the front, who had been whispering earlier, looked visibly uncomfortable. Her face flushed with embarrassment. Olivia continued, her tone firm but calm. This incident is a reminder of the importance of treating everyone with respect, regardless of their appearance, status, or background. Prejudice has no place here or anywhere. Her words hung in the air, resonating with everyone in the cabin. Grace, the junior flight attendant, stepped forward hesitantly. Her eyes filled with remorse. "Miss Carter," she said softly, "I'm so sorry for not speaking up earlier. I saw what was happening, and I should have done more." Olivia turned to her, offering a small but reassuring smile. "It takes courage to stand up in difficult situations," she said. "You have that courage. Next time, don't hesitate to use it." Grace nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. As the plane began its descent, the atmosphere in the cabin shifted. The earlier tension was replaced by a sense of admiration and reflection. Olivia returned to her seat, her calm demeanor intact. But there was a quiet strength in her presence that left an indelible impression on everyone. When the plane landed and Olivia exited, passengers watched her in silence, some offering quiet nods of respect. Outside, a sleek black SUV waited for her, the driver holding the door open. Before stepping into the vehicle, Olivia paused, looking back at the plane. In that moment, she knew this incident wasn't just about her, it was about the broader message it carried. A message that would resonate far beyond the confines of that luxurious jet. Later, in a televised interview, Olivia spoke candidly about the experience. True respect isn't about wealth, titles, or appearances, she said. It's about how we treat one another. That's the real measure of success. Her words quickly went viral, inspiring millions to reflect on their own actions and the way they judge others. For Olivia, the journey wasn't just about changing one flight, it was about changing the narrative, one step at a time. As the jet taxied to its final stop, the tension that had hung in the air throughout the flight began to dissipate. Olivia Carter stood calmly near the cabin door, her poise unshaken despite the chaos that had unfolded around her. Passengers who had been silent observers now regarded her with a mixture of respect and quiet awe. Grace Miller, the junior flight attendant, approached Olivia hesitantly. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and her hands fidgeted nervously. "Miss Carter," she began, her voice trembling, "I just want to say, I'm so sorry for everything. I should have spoken up sooner. But I was afraid." Olivia turned to Grace, her expression softening. "Grace," she said, her voice calm and reassuring, "acknowledging your fear is the first step to overcoming it. Next time, trust your instincts. You have the courage to do what's right." Grace nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered, her gratitude evident. As Olivia gathered her belongings, a few passengers took the opportunity to apologize as well. An older woman who had been whispering earlier stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Miss Carter," she stammered, I judged you unfairly. I'm sorry for that." Olivia offered her a small smile. "We've all made judgments at some point," she replied gently. "What matters is that we learn from them." The businessman who had supported Olivia during the confrontation gave her a respectful nod. "Miss Carter," he said, "your composure was remarkable. It's clear now why you're in the position you are. Thank you for reminding us all of what true leadership looks like." Olivia inclined her head, her quiet grace leaving a lasting impression. Outside, the sleek black SUV awaited her, the driver standing by with the door open. Olivia paused at the top of the jet stairs, taking one last look at the plane. She knew this moment was bigger than the events of the day. It was about setting a precedent, one that demanded respect and fairness regardless of appearances. Days later, Olivia sat in a sleek studio, her elegance and confidence captivating the audience. Across from her, the interviewer leaned forward, visibly intrigued. "Miss Carter," the interviewer began, "your story has gone viral. Millions of people around the world have seen how you handled that situation with such calm authority. What do you hope people take away from this?" Olivia's gaze was steady as she responded. "What happened on that flight was unfortunate. But it wasn't just about me," she said. "It was a reflection of how deeply rooted prejudices can affect our actions. My hope is that this story encourages people to pause and reflect on how they treat others." The interviewer nodded, visibly moved by her words. "You've spoken before about the importance of respect. How would you define that in today's world?" Olivia's expression softened, her voice carrying a quiet strength. "True success and respect aren't about titles, wealth, or appearances," she said. "They're about how we treat one another. Every interaction we have, whether it's with a stranger, a colleague, or a loved one, shapes the world we live in. If we want a better world, we must start with kindness and fairness." The audience erupted in applause, her message striking a chord with viewers across the globe. Weeks later, Olivia boarded another flight, this time greeted with warmth and professionalism by the crew. The lead flight attendant, a middle-aged man with a friendly demeanor, extended his hand. "Welcome aboard, Miss Carter," he said sincerely. "It's an honor to have you with us." Olivia returned the handshake, offering a genuine smile. "Thank you," she replied, appreciating the respectful tone. As she settled into her seat, she observed the cabin. The atmosphere was light and welcoming, with the flight attendants treating every passenger with the same attentive care. Olivia noticed one of the attendants pausing to assist an elderly woman with her bag, her tone kind and patient. For the first time in a while, Olivia felt a sense of hope. This flight wasn't just about getting to her destination, it symbolized a shift in perspective, a glimpse of what was possible when respect and empathy were prioritized. The businessman seated nearby leaned over, a hint of admiration in his voice. "It seems your message is making waves," he said with a smile. Olivia nodded, her gaze shifting to the horizon visible through the window. "Change starts with small actions," she replied. "Sometimes those actions can ripple farther than we ever imagine." In the weeks following the viral story, Olivia's message continued to resonate. The airline issued a formal apology, not just to Olivia but to all passengers affected by the incident. Policies were revised, and staff underwent extensive training on treating every passenger with dignity and respect. Olivia, however, wasn't content to stop there. She used the momentum from the incident to launch an initiative aimed at combating prejudice in the workplace, partnering with organizations across industries to promote inclusivity and awareness. Through her actions, Olivia showed the world that standing up for respect isn't just about holding others accountable, it's about leading by example. As she gazed out the window of the jet, the clouds parting to reveal the vast expanse of blue sky, Olivia felt a quiet triumph. The events of that day had been a turning point not just for her, but for everyone who witnessed or heard about it. Because in the end, the true measure of success wasn't the size of her empire or the luxury of her jet. It was the impact she made, the lives she touched, and the reminder that respect is a currency everyone can afford to give. As the jet ascended into the clear skies that day, it left behind not just a runway but a powerful lesson that resonated far beyond the cabin walls. Olivia Carter's story is a reminder of a truth we often overlook: the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect. This incident wasn't just about a slap or a confrontation. It was about how one moment of prejudice, one assumption made in haste, can have far-reaching consequences. Rachel Thompson's actions cost her not only her job but her reputation, serving as a cautionary tale for us all. At the heart of this story is Olivia's unshakable grace and composure. Despite the humiliation and mistreatment she endured, she never lashed out or retaliated. Instead, she stood firm, using her voice and actions to send a powerful message. In her own words, true success and respect aren't about titles or appearances, they're about how we treat one another. Every person deserves to be valued, not judged, based on their background, status, or the color of their skin. This isn't just Olivia's story, it's a call to action for all of us. A call to reflect on how we interact with others, how we respond in moments of tension, and how we can contribute to a world where respect is universal, not selective. Now, we'd like to hear from you. Do you think Rachel deserves forgiveness for her actions? Have you ever faced or witnessed prejudice in your life? How did it affect you? And what did you learn from it? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences can inspire others and foster the change we all wish to see. If this story resonated with you, don't stop here. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Spread the message that respect and kindness are not optional, they're essential. And if you want to hear more stories that challenge perspectives, inspire change, and leave you thinking, subscribe to our channel. Hit that like button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a chance to be part of these important conversations. Together, let's build a community where respect, empathy, and understanding are the foundations of every interaction. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story. Let's continue to make the world a better place, one story at a time.